So maybe you have some smart home tech that works really well and other smart home tech that's frustrating and gives you lots of problems. And that could be for any number of reasons, but a big portion is how does that smart home tech connect to your smart home? And a lot of that also comes down to how well does that company build that connection to your smart home? Do they maintain it? Do they fix all the bugs over time? And of course, that's something I look into when I test all kinds of products here on my channel, but it's also something that I think is nice to look back on across a bunch of different companies and how are they doing with their tech to connect to your smart home. So based on my experience using a lot of these with Apple Home, we're gonna make a tier list today of different technologies. Now I've cut them up into small pieces of paper and put them in this bowl. We can pull them out at random and put them on the tier list to give you an idea of some of the companies and technologies for connecting to your smart home that are ones you might want to purchase and ones you might want to avoid. And we'll see if we actually end up with anything on the F tier. And if you aren't familiar with a tier list, it's just a way to rank things that is popular with a lot of people on the internet. So S tier is the best, and then going down to different letters all the way to the letter F. So what I'm doing is S tier and then a kind of standard grading system of A, B, C, D, F below S. So let's get started. The Eufy HomeBase S380. So this is the base that connects the Eufy S3 Pro to Apple Home, HomeKit Secure Video, and other stuff. This works pretty well, but it doesn't have the best range in my book for getting to cameras outside when the base is inside. Kind of limited range. So I'm gonna give it B tier. All right, let's go next. Another camera one. UniFi cameras over PoE. Well, these are really reliable and have a really great connection. Ubiquiti UniFi cameras over power over Ethernet. So if you're running a hardwired cable to your camera, it's probably gonna have a good data connection. But they don't work natively with Apple Home, which means they're not absolutely perfect. So I'm gonna give them A tier. Next up, Nanoleaf Matter over Thread. So Nanoleaf makes a lot of multicolored lighting products. They were one of the first companies to support Thread, but yeah, over time their Thread stuff has given me a lot of issues. They continue to work on updating it, and they do have some creative products, but nothing that really stands out with reliability, and they're also not continuing to use as much Thread. So I'm gonna give that a C tier. They have some more debugging to do. Let's see, Lutron Caseta wireless bridge. I'm gonna give that an S tier. That is a really good connection protocol. It works really well. The light switches are really solid. The smart plugs as well are also very solid. Pico remotes, everything. Can't speak highly enough about the Caseta wireless bridge in terms of reliability. They don't support Matter, and you do need to have a bridge connected to your home network, but if you're willing to do that, it's great. Speaking of Matter, TP-Link Matter over Wi-Fi. So I love a lot of TP-Link's Wi-Fi smart plugs, and I use them in my home. I've also tried, although I haven't made a video about it, some of TP-Link's plugs that are dimmable with the dimmer control. So there's a lot of different options there. I'm gonna give it, it's not completely reliable all the time, but it's pretty solid. So I'm gonna give it an A tier. All right, Aqara cameras over Wi-Fi. These work really well in Apple Home, and they also work well in the Aqara app, other systems, and they're very reliable. So S tier. Let's see, let's pick another one, shuffle it up. Govee Matter over Wi-Fi. Govee makes a lot of multicolored lights. They do have some nice local network support, especially if you use them with Home Assistant, but directly with Matter over Wi-Fi in Apple Home and other systems, I find they're good, but not the best. I'm gonna give them a B, because what I find is I end up using it, it works really well, but then 3 months later, something stops working with it. And that's just my experience with a lot of Govee lights. Although this lamp behind me, this tree floor lamp, has been rock solid for a long time now, like 6 months. Would highly recommend that. It just depends. Same thing with Nanoleaf. Earlier we were talking about them Matter over Thread. We'll get to the Matter over Wi-Fi with Nanoleaf, but my backyard lights have been working really well from Nanoleaf. Speaking of Matter over Thread, Eve Matter over Thread. Eve makes a lot of different Matter products, and they really work hard to get that integration as solid as possible. I think more than anybody. They also have a great app for managing Apple Home if you're into that. But they've also been doing a lot more with smart things recently. So a lot of flexibility there. I would give Eve an A tier with their connection reliability. Homey Pro or Homey Pro Mini, which is a bridge into your Apple Home. Now, this works really reliably in and of itself in its own system. And I really like some of the Homey Pro automation options. We'll talk more about that probably in future videos, but my annoying complaint with the Apple Home integration is it doesn't let you easily exclude categories or better yet, brands of devices. So if I add the Homey app for, let's say, Lutron Caseta into Homey so I can control it in Homey automations, it's also in Apple Home. But then if I integrate Homey into Apple Home as well, then you get this whole weird scenario where your Lutron lights appear twice in Apple Home, once through the Homey bridge and once through Lutron. So I don't like that, and I would like to pick and choose, not just on device level, which Homey lets you do, but on a brand or device category level to say all robot vacuums or don't include Lutron. There are different ways to slice it maybe from a software side, but that's my big downside complaint with Homey. I'm going to give them B tier because they're very reliable, but that is a major annoyance. Nanoleaf Matter over Wi-Fi. I was talking earlier about my outdoor outdoor string lights that work really well with that. I think Nanoleaf's been doing a lot more better stuff with their Wi-Fi, also the light bulbs that I tried, but it's still not rock solid. I'm going to give them kind of right alongside Govee a B tier. Yeah, B tier is getting pretty crowded. HomePod Mini over AirPlay 2. So if you want to play music on your HomePod Minis and kind of lump in HomePod here, this is pretty reliable as long as you're not doing too many rooms at once. Once you get a lot of rooms, then it gets kind of tricky and laggy, but I would say overall, let's give it an A tier. It used to be maybe like a C or a D tier, but Apple's fixed a lot of those bugs. Logitech cameras over Wi-Fi. I've been playing, over the years with different Logitech cameras, Logitech Circle View doorbell, the Logitech Circle camera. The Circle View doorbell is pretty good, but the Circle cameras are not. So I'm gonna have to give them C tier. No, you know what? I'm moving it down to D tier. The Circle cameras are really bad, and they're not supporting any of it basically anymore. I mean, not officially, I think they are, but Philips Hue Bridge. So this is really good overall, but I will say occasionally I'll ask Apple Home to do an automation or a scene and it won't set the Philips Hue bulb's color correctly. You have to run the scene again. It'll get the brightness level, but it won't set the color. I also think there's a lot of unanswered questions in how well is Philips Hue going to pull off this transition to Matter, less expensive bulbs, Matter over Thread, and a bunch of other features they're adding. So I'm going to put them in A tier. All right, SwitchBot Hub 2. Pretty good, but not rock solid. I think it's kind of in the B to C tier, maybe B tier. It's definitely, I think it's better than C tier, but yeah, B tier. All right, Home Assistant Green. So I have the Home Assistant Green. It's how I like to run Home Assistant. You can run Home Assistant on lots of different hardware, made or licensed by the company, or just roll your own on a lot of different devices. I find the Home Assistant Green works pretty well, but then some software update will mess it up. And I continue to have to manage Home Assistant and its integration with other platforms like Apple Home. And I think if you're doing everything in Home Assistant and then just using Apple Home as a way to manually control your lights, so all your automations happen in Home Assistant, then I think it might be an A tier. But given the challenges I've had with just getting it to work reliably with Apple Home, where Apple Home's doing a lot of the automation and Home Assistant's just being a bridge for certain products, I find that unreliable. So I'm going to give it a C tier for my experience. All right, Flic Hub Mini. This thing is very small, but it has very poor range. I think it would be good in a small office setting, but not really a home or a small, maybe like apartment setting. But most cases, you're just going to want to upgrade to the Flic Hub LR. Which is their long range hub. It's going to be way better, way more capacity. So I'm going to give this F tier. I love Flic, but that hub is not for me. It did not work well for me. So I'm looking here in my archive of old smart home tech, and I can't find my Flic Hub Mini. I must have gotten rid of it. I also thought maybe I'd have some old footage that I could put on the screen right now, but I don't even have that. But I promise you, I tried it, and it was terrible. Eve cameras over Wi-Fi. Now, these tend to be very solid, maybe not quite as solid as Aqara's cameras in terms of reliability, but it's either A or S tier. I don't know if it's quite S tier level. I have had them go offline a handful of times, but Eve cameras get A tier. Aqara Matter over Thread. So if you're familiar, Aqara has this feature with some of their newer sensors where you can actually pair them direct to your favorite smart home system of choice like Apple Home. You don't have to do something like putting them through an Aqara Bridge if you don't want to. I've played with this with some of their door sensors, I think their motion sensor. I haven't done it with their presence sensors, but this works pretty well, but it's not as reliable as some other Aqara products. So I'm gonna give it a B tier. Again, that crowded B tier. The YoLink Bridge. So YoLink is a really cool product, a very interesting set of choices, long range radio capabilities, heavily based on the cloud. There's actually some use cases where I think YoLink really makes sense, and I might end up talking about it on the channel sometime soon. I've been playing with different products from YoLink that I purchased. They haven't sent me anything. But yeah, given the lack of smart home integrations with other smart home stuff, especially Apple Home, unless you go through Home Assistant or something else, it's gotta be F tier for me. Aqara M3 Hub. So the M3 Hub had a rough start. I was kind of confused about it at first and just not really into the whole idea of Aqara trying to become more of an automation hub in your home. I just felt like it's just like Philips Hue or Lutron. You just buy the bridge and it connects to other stuff, but that's it. You don't really run a lot of stuff off of your bridge with Aqara. But I've started running more automations with it, and it's also gotten more reliable. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better than what it used to be. So I'm gonna give it probably A tier. All right, Starling Home Hub. Rest in peace, no longer being made, but a great way to connect your Google Nest devices to Apple Home, but because the support's going away, it's got to be F tier at this point. Sonos over AirPlay 2. So you can use Sonos, of course, in their own app, but you can also add it with AirPlay 2 over into Apple's system as well. It's pretty reliable, but there can be some like confusing states between AirPlay and Sonos, and especially if it's a sound bar and playing audio from the TV and making sure your settings are right there. I think because of that kind of confusing relationship, I end up just not adding a lot of my Sonos speakers to AirPlay. I just use Sonos with the Sonos app and Sonos' system, maybe tie those with Apple Home automations with a flick button like I've talked about recently on my channel. But I'm not really using my Sonos speakers in AirPlay. Sonos speakers are great, but their AirPlay integration, I'm gonna just go with the D tier because I think it can make things more complicated even though it works reliably. Aqara's M2 Hub, soon to be replaced, or kind of already replaced by the M200. But Aqara's M2 Hub is an incredibly reliable hub. It does a great job tying Zigbee devices from Aqara, which same protocol that Philips Hue uses with their lights, or Philips Hue's changing a little bit, but generally speaking, Philips Hue lights are Zigbee based, and a lot of Aqara's stuff is Zigbee based, and this hub, the M2 Hub, is incredible. Really great performance. So that's got to be S tier. It's been rock solid for me for years. All right, the Flic Hub LR. So this is an expensive hub, but I was mentioning in a recent video, kind of all the software stuff Flic is doing with Matter and other smart home integrations with their Hub LR specifically is really impressive. And I think, well, I gave their Flic Hub Mini an F tier. I actually want to give this an S tier because I think the Flic Hub LR is actually a really good device, even though, yes, it is running Bluetooth behind the scenes, which if you know much about smart home tech, it's not the most reliable wireless protocol for smart home stuff. However, I think Flic does a good job pulling it off overall, and it works pretty well. And we got one more in the bowl, HOOBS. HOOBS is an abbreviation for HomeBridge out of the box. I think something like that. I'll put on the screen exactly what it is. Yeah, HomeBridge and HOOBS, they can be nice if you already have smart home tech and then you decide, I want to do Apple Home and my stuff that I already have doesn't talk to Apple Home. Then HomeBridge could be there to save you, although between Homey and Home Assistant and other stuff, you got options there. So I would say at this point, HomeBridge is kind of F tier. It's yesterday's technology. It doesn't always work reliably, and I would just avoid it and go with other options if I were you. All right, so this video probably ruffled some feathers, made some people happy and sad. Maybe you liked some of my picks, maybe you didn't like some of my picks. Maybe there's technologies or products that you wish I'd included. I based it off of my experience, which is what I can speak about, right? But I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Thanks again so much for watching. And if you want to see more about that Flic Hub LR and how it works with the new Flic Duo button, I have a video all about that right here on the screen. Thanks again so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.